Hey, this is Sam Black with my first match with White Black Warriors in Standard. I'm on the play. I have a hand that's not very aggressive, but it's pretty good at playing a mid-range game. I have slightly mixed feelings on keeping hands like this, but I think I've had better experiences more often than bad experiences with it, so I'm going to try it. I have 10 1-mana creatures and 8 2-mana creatures, which is enough that I could try to mulligan to always have one, but here I do have a good mix of lands and spells. I have the combo of a way to exile a creature and a way to process the exiled thing. And I think this hand can just play a reasonable medium-length game against a lot of decks. And I also have outs to improve a lot if I draw any 2-drop, or even a 1-drop that I play on turn 2. I'm leading with Polluted Delta because I'm going to fetch Prairie Stream to get white mana that doesn't hurt me, and to get double white for Stasis Snare, and I obviously want it to be untapped as soon as possible. I'm not doing anything with the mana on my first turn. Alright, good. I drew a creature to get some pressure going. Doesn't particularly matter which creature it is. And now we see what happens. Alright, it looks like I'm getting to untap with Kythian, which is good. Now I get to start applying some pressure. And of course I just play the Bloodsoaked Champion here. I could play the Wasteland Strangler, since my opponent is probably playing a creature-light deck where the combination of snaring something early and strangling is not likely. But I think that there's not a lot of upside to getting the creature with 1 more power into play. Whereas this plays around counter magic, because if he counters the Bloodsoaked Champion, I can immediately raid it, whereas this could just get countered. And it also leaves up Valorous Stance in case my opponent plays something like a Ruinous Path. And also, as it happens, it gives me the option to play Chief of the Edge before combat here, for 1 extra power to get the same amount of damage that this would be offering. Question is whether I want to do that. I think the answer is yes. I don't think I really get punished for this. It's countered, that's fine. Incidentally, Horribly Awry actually could have countered Bloodsoaked Champion in a useful fashion. Wonder if my opponent had the option and chose not to. I suspect that not using Horribly Awry on Bloodsoaked Champion would be wrong. I wonder if the fear was that I was going to play another good 2-drop, and my opponent wanted to Horribly Awry that, in which case I really got paid for not playing the Wasteland Strangler. There's the Ruinous Path that I had previously held protection for, but things did not sequence right for me, or my opponent sequenced properly to prevent that. So here is a spot where I don't have a lot of pressure and I do have a lot of answers, and so I'm going to use this card that can sometimes function as an answer as additional pressure. My opponent's already down to 9, so I got that going for me. Untapping here is big. Now I'm presenting half my opponent's life in power with Valorous Stance to protect my creature. I just get to do the damage for free. Alright, so now I have to decide if I want to play Bloodshin Rager. I suspect that a dig through time is coming. And that means that even if my opponent didn't previously have a sweeper, my opponent could find one. But people don't seem to play very many sweepers in their decks these days, and if my opponent finds something like a Crux of Fate, I can Valorous Stance to protect my Wasteland Strangler, and then if Bloodstained Mire is sacrificed in the process, Wasteland Strangler becomes lethal, and if it's not, well, I turn off the Bloodstained Mire and get my opponent to 1. On the other hand, I could just pass here, since I do already have lethal power in play. But it's a lot easier for my opponent to win by just casting spot removal spells if I do that. Or like a spot removal spell and a blocker. So, well, I mean a blocker would probably die, but a spot removal spell makes this not lethal. So anyway, I'm going to play the Bloodshin Rager. I think it's pretty close, and I'm not sure if this is right, but I've just seen so few sweepers. I don't really know exactly what my opponent's deck looks like. This also helps with if my opponent does something like cast Piet and Kiran Nalaar, continuing to have a relevant pressure. Alright, and that got a Silumgar's Scorn, revealing Silumgar the Drifting Death. So I'm satisfied with that outcome. Silumgar coming down is annoying. I suspect that's what's going to happen. My opponent going to 3 is good, though. So I can't deal with Silumgar, but I guess if my opponent has another fetch land, they can't cast it. I need to have an untapped non-fetch land, which they do. So now Silumgar comes down, presumably. Yep. And I likely attack with both and protect the... Oh! Well, I probably just draw perfect and dash this and kill my opponent. Okay, so that's basically what we're looking to do with this deck. Against Grixis Control, I probably want the counter spells. I want Mastery the Unseen. I probably want Secure the Wastes. And I probably want Duress. And I don't think I want any of these 3 mana creatures. I think that they just easily get countered or killed by red spells that do 2 damage for 1 mana. And they just don't offer enough upside. I'm really just trying to get early creatures down and then prevent my opponent's answers. I don't know... Well, I don't need my 2 mana answer to Jace. I don't need my answer to Jace to cost 2 mana. And I suspect that my opponent likely has something like Dragonlord Silumgar or Dragonlord Culligan that I want Stasis Snare. So I think I'm going to go Stasis Snares and Silk Wraps as my removal spells. It's an argument for ultimate price. It kills Jace for 2 and can kill something like a Thunderbreak Regent, but I think that Valorous Stances and Stasis Snares are a good mix of the right kinds of removal. Stasis Snare lets me answer Jace or a big dragon, and Valorous Stance lets me protect my threats or answer a big dragon. And I think I like Murderous Cut more than Ultimate Price, given the threat of something like Dragonlord Culligan. Tassiger is another consideration, but again, I have a lot of removal in for that. So I think this is where I want to be. All my early pressure, all my counter spells, some relatively difficult to interact with later threats, and the right removal spells, and mastery. When I'm dropping all my 3-drops, I could potentially cut a land, especially since I'm going to be on the draw, but mastery makes me want to have a lot of lands, so I don't like doing that. The only problem with this hand is that I can't I can't cast Mardu Reaper on turn 1, but I think that's acceptable to have a good hand with mastery and both my colors of mana starting on turn 2. So I'm going to keep this. Just have to fetch a tap Polluted Delta, or Prairie Stream again. Oh, I get to draw plains, and then this hand gets much better. Now I can Will Reaper and then fetch a Swamp to cast Chief, and then fetch Prairie Stream to have double white if I need it, without ever having a tapped land. So this is a great draw, and obviously I had a lot of outs of untapped white as my draw. So I definitely lead Chief the Edge here, which I assume will not live, but gotta try to do what I can. Oh, great. So now my opponent has already taken 5 damage and is behind 2 threats. What I'm hoping to fade here is Radiant Flames. But no such luck. But that does allow me to play another creature to the board. And now I need to remember to get blue mana, which is fine, there's no cost to doing that. I guess I'll do it in my upkeep. Technically best to not give a window where I don't have the mana up. There's an argument that I want to not be representing Dispel because I have it in my deck, and I don't necessarily want my opponent to know that I have it in my deck, but I think it's better to just consistently play right and not reveal information about what I'm doing based on when I make plays like that. So here I attack, and my opponent didn't use a removal spell and can't dig this turn. I think there's a reasonable chance that my opponent is sitting on a counterspell. So rather than expose Mastery, I'm just going to play Plains and pass, and make my opponent not do anything productive with mana this turn, and then secure the waste at the end of my opponent's turn, and then have Mastery the next turn. This line isn't great if my opponent uses an instant speed removal spell at the end of my turn, but it's fine. And taking 3 damage to hold up a counterspell is pretty expensive. Yeah, so I did just have my opponent waste mana that turn, which makes me think that there's a counterspell, but I suspect that this Secure the Wastes will give me an answer for sure. Remember that these are warriors, so I am trying to put 6 power into play here if my opponent doesn't have an answer or removal spell, which is very close to lethal. So yeah, that eats the counterspell, which I'm obviously comfortable with. That was the whole plan. And now I attack. And now presumably resolve Mastery through a counter. And I'm going to play Caves here because Delta can no longer fetch white because I already have Prairie Stream. And, oh, I guess I can play Delta and leave up. I have 3 white already, so I can Mastery and Stasis Snare. Alright, I guess I'll play Delta first then. I don't really want to draw lands, even though I have Mastery, because I'm pretty far from being able to double activate it. So, Delta, Mastery, and then pass with Stasis Snare mana up. Hoping to see something like a dragon other than Silumgar the Drifting Death. Instead, it looks like we're seeing a main phase dig through time, which I'm fine with. I might as well get Sunken Hollow here. That's a good draw. This is better than activating Mastery. I guess there's no reason not to attack first. I'll just make an ally here. So if my opponent plays Dragonlord Silumgar and takes Gideon, that's actually fine. My opponent could then either make a Knight ally or an Emblem. If Emblem, then I snare the Dragonlord. Okay, Drifting Death is also fine. So now I can plus Gideon and attack with everything, and my opponent is obligated to block Gideon and go to 1. I might as well dress before making any decisions, though. Draconic Roar, Foul-Tongue Invocation, Horribly Awry, and Dig Through Time. Draconic Roar. See, so I animate Gideon and I attack with everything. My opponent blocks and goes to 1. At that point, Draconic Roar plus an attack can kill Gideon and one of my creatures, but I get to make another creature. I think I just take Foul-Tongue Invocation. I think gaining 4 life is the scariest thing my opponent can do. Dig Through Time is still expensive. My opponent won't really be able to cast that and do something productive with the cards they find. My opponent just lost connection, so this is going to be a little while, if my opponent is even coming back. So I guess I can just talk through that decision a little more, although it's pretty self-explanatory. So the Draconic Roar will kill this and put Gideon down to 2. Then a Silumgar attack can finish off Gideon. But at that point I can Mastery and have 2 lethal threats. So I don't think that is going to lead to a winning line. My opponent would need to have 2 different answers in addition to the Draconic Roar, which isn't possible with only 1 draw step. Horribly Awry obviously does nothing at this point, and Dig Through Time is too expensive to profitably cast. So really straightforward Foul-Tongue Invocation take. I'll be surprised if my opponent can get out of this, but maybe like even thinking about like Languish and attack Gideon holding Draconic Roar, but then I could just not use Mastery and my opponent can't cast the Draconic Roar, and so then Gideon's lethal. I guess my opponent could just draw a Foul-Tongue Invocation and then have Foul-Tongue Invocation plus Draconic Roar and leave Silumgar back to block Gideon, or even attack Gideon at that point. Yeah, because kill 2 of my creatures, go up to 5, kill Gideon. Yeah, that would do it. Alright, so I have to discard a card and 2 damage to me. So my opponent's killing Gideon. I don't think this is a winning line. Gideon dies, and then Draconic Roar can't kill all 3 of my attackers. Oh no, this is no attack. It's just Draconic Roar to finish off Gideon. And now Silumgar is back to block, and I only have one attacker, but I can Mastery for a second attacker and then win. So my opponent is, yeah, I was like representing Fire Impulse, but I know my opponent's hand, and tapping this for red to cast Fire Impulse would be lethal. So that is the match, provided I remember to activate Mastery and then attack. Alright, sweet.